Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today, my good friend Ram. He is the core contributor at OpenLedger. I assume you are one of the core contributors at OpenLedger. How you got to be working at OpenLedger?
Oh yeah, so I always go to this background that I started from the industry a bit while ago, um, around 2017. So I might be one of the few people who kind of stayed back after that batch of industry players. So I got paid in Bitcoin. That's how I got to know about the tech. Loved what it was. Started building an R&D company around that. Grew to a large firm, about 200 plus employees. Worked with pretty much every other um, enterprise or blockchain companies during the time, like Polygon, Header, Hashgraph, and so and so. Was very active during the 2021 bull run as well. The overall like the Web 2 to Web 3 migration was happening, right? So got an opportunity to work with a lot of enterprise companies like Walmart's India subsidiary Flipkart. We worked with Viacom, Cadbury's, Pepsi, many more brands as well. Help them migrate to Web3 in certain aspects that they want to do, like loyalties and stuff like that. And then just being active in the space during the time. The 2022-23 bear market just taught us a lot about how the industry is and how it will shift. I saw that there is a need for like data to be on chain and like stuff that can be done with data. And also saw AI boom happening on one side. Wanted to bring this together and see how we can uh, play an important role in collecting data for like models and then refined it much more. And then that's what we brought us here as OpenLedger. And it's an interesting time to be building in the AI space, especially Web3 AI space. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's an exciting project to do a lot of AI episodes. But if you could, real quick, just tell us what the overall mission is, and then let's just walk through some of the key features.
Yeah, the overall vision behind the product, right, is to build that like a decentralized trust infrastructure for data contributors to contribute and build specialized models on top of us, right? And why specialized model is because we all know that there is large language models, there are foundation models which are being used by most of the AI services and apps today. But these are not the sort of like the only thing that will be there, right? So if you like take famous quotes by a lot of people, like LLMs will be like an OS, it'll be like a bedrock of our AI systems, and there'll be like very specific models that will serve specific domain-based needs, because that's how the market will evolve, right? And that is what we are building for. We know that AI is going to become a general purpose technology. It's going to become like electricity. It's going to become something that I and you would use every day, like how we use internet and the electricity. It's going to just be part of our life. We're not going to be without it. And if that's going to happen, you would need AI to be available in every domain that is there, and you want it to be much very efficient, right? Not one system can really solve it. So there would be multiple smaller models which are less hallucinating, which are less, much more accurate, and less energy consuming, that actively does the work and uses LLM to just understand the context, right? That's how we've seen apps and AI services evolve as well. Like, for example, apps like Perplexity today uses a LLM like OpenAI and to understand context, and then runs it through a smaller model, let's say like a fee model to understand a math question. So it's already happening, and that's how the market also will evolve. And we're building for that. We are building a trust platform where data contributors can contribute for models to be built and host it in our platform and let agents or apps infer on these models and make much more precise decisions and much more efficient way of operating, as I would say. So yeah, so that's what we're building.
Yeah. So if I can just follow up, are there, is it specifically around building essentially bespoke data sets, or maybe not bespoke data sets, but maybe relatively niche data sets. Like, for example, somebody might need to look at all of the different signs in the world. Like, I looked at like Public AI. We've interviewed them. We've interviewed a few other companies. Talk to us a little bit about like what exactly like kind of the feature set is. Is it people are able to generate and like contribute to an open data source?
Yeah, so what I'm talking is very high level, right? Sort of like 10,000 feet above. But like the idea behind this is to create unique models because models are the intelligence. Like if you have intelligence, you have a better output. And if you want to get that intelligence, you need to feed the brain with data. I think of AI to be like a brain, and then you need to feed like unique data for it to give you that intelligence. And that's sort of like so first phase, right? So the three parts to us, there is the data phase, and then there is the model, and then the third is the agentic layer or the app layer, which uses our models. And for us to first a point like come to a point where we can actually have like very unique and useful models, we need to collect very good data. And we need to have a platform where people can collect very good data. And what is good data? It's very relative. It could be different. It could be like for if you're building a code model, like let's say you're building a solidity model, you would need to have the best solidity code descriptions as much as possible, the best documentation as possible, probably the best developers to contribute to that, right? Probably the co-founders of Withream, if they contribute, it will be much more useful compared to the newbie contributing to that, right? So it comes down to that particular domain need and then getting the data that is required. And what we provide is the tools to achieve that. It's the infrastructure and the tools to achieve that. So you could create like a data net. Think of that to be like a contract. So that contract is basically you're saying that there is a need for this particular data because there's a need for a model of this intelligence. So we need to start with data, and let's say we're starting with solidity as a concept, and because people are building that on top of us right now in a closed beta, right? They're building a solidity data net where it's a contract which is going to have certain set of rules on what kind of data has to be contributed. And this rule is again validated by a validator set. And we use eigenlayer as a validator set. We didn't want to bootstrap our validation. So eigenlayer operators validate this data, which is a rule engine. Think of that to be like an SQL rule engine. It is a rule engine which runs these rules of the data that is being collected. And as they start to contribute this data, it goes to this rule engine, and then data gets filled up in this data repository, right? And it could be off chain. We just have the hash of the data and the user that provides the data, those wallet details on chain. And as we collect this, as data is being collected, you could then provide this data along with a model on top of us as a RAG. So RAG is basically, think of that to be like a prompt or sort of like a database that you can hook up to, so model can refer to that and give you better answers. Or if you think it's necessary for the model to be fine-tuned, then you go ahead and fine-tune that model with that data and then start hosting that model on top of us, in which then is accessed by any AI services. It could be agents, it could be apps, it could be any services that is a traditional platform using AI. So that is what we envision to build, right? And that is what is happening right now. So it all starts with data, and it all depends on the person or the team or the company that is collecting the data on top of us. They decide using our tools how to collect data and what kind of data they want to collect, and then it goes into much more details of how they want to clean the data, how they want to process the data. The raw data is obviously never useful. It is the first element of this, and it goes through a process of getting it cleaned and getting it processed, making it available for and making it ready for training data, and then going ahead with the process of fine tuning or RAG or whatever it is. So, as I told you, we're all talking about much more higher level, but this is what is sort of like much more closer in depth details of what happens between collecting the data and then fine tuning a model.
Yeah, so it seems like it's a like multi-sided marketplace. There are people that can contribute the data. There are people that can, kind
Yeah.
of fine tune their models, and then there are also the AI agents that would then be using the
Yeah.
underlying models. So actually, let's walk through the life cycle. Let's say I want to construct an AI agent. Like I'm very curious, but I want it to be relatively bespoke, or maybe I really want to build an AI agent around trading or portfolio optimization. Talk to us a little bit about how we would use OpenLedger in order to be
Yeah.
able
So if you want to build like a trading agent, right, you would want that agent to actually probably trade like hundreds and thousands of dollars for you. You today's agents, I'm not sure if you would trust that and like provide like hundreds and thousands of dollars to it.
Not yet, not yet.
Not yet, right? Because you know very well, first it's not proven, and you know very well these models or this agents that use these models are not actually very well trained on traditional or usual trading methods that is there. So what you actually do is basically you start off with collecting data of whatever that you think is useful for building a trading agent, right? It could start with, like, for example, let's talk about Web3 trade around, right? We could start with like Web3 alpha because that's one of the most important aspect of any trading agent because you need to know what's happening in the market. Compared to stock or any other, Web3 market is very aligned with what happens on the news, and it fluctuates very rapidly, right? It's very volatile. So you need to always be on the knowing what's happening in the news. So you would need to have a large amount of contextual like history of news that has happened. So that is sort of like the Web3 alpha, right? And then you would also need to have sort of like a continuous pipeline of data feed, sort of like a RAG, which is an updated RAG that is always plugged into your model. So you know what is happening at that particular moment as well. So the model can look at the history, have a context of overall history that has happened in the Web3 industry, and also look at its RAG of the current news that is happening and trends that are happening. And then you also have sort of like, traditional trading methods, like techniques of trading and stuff like that, which you basically train this model with. And then now what you do is basically you take like a large language model, like an open source Llama model, and then you train that with traditional training methods. Now you have like a large data set of that. You train with that, and then you provide with the RAG of the current news that happens. Now you have a model which understands Web3 alpha, which has a context of Web3, whatever happens in Web3 and the news and the history behind that, which knows how to trade, which knows how to read signals, which knows how to read charts, maybe, which can also autonomously think because it has all this information. And then you have RAG, where it can query anytime and figure out what's happening in the current news. And then you also give it sort of like certain agentic workflow so that it can, search the news and figure out what's happening as well. Now you build an agent on top of this. This is much more efficient compared to, and the current agents today, which is simply a system prompt, which uses a OpenAI model or a Llama model, basic model, which has just basic knowledge to go ahead and trade. It is like you're letting a 12th grad, an undergrad to go ahead and trade for you compared to like a PhD to go ahead and do something. So it's sort of like that comparison, right? You gotta give that data to a model to actually it to be very efficient and perform a particular task, and that's what someone would do. So they would use a platform to collect the data, as I told you. They would use a platform to fine tune the model. They would choose which model that is hosted on the platform and then fine tune that with the data that they collected, and then host it and then build agents on top of this. We are partnering with agent frameworks, so they could choose any open source framework or closed frameworks if it is available to use that and launch agents on top of that. So now you have a much more purpose-driven, much more efficient model, which gives a better agent output.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. And then talk to us a little bit about the stage of the product. Like, where are you guys at? Do you have any partnerships? What's the
Yeah. So we are going testnet in about I think few days. I'm not sure when this will be aired, but it will come out in few days. We are partnering with a lot of people. We're also taking a very phased approach in this because we don't believe in label partnerships. It's not just I'm just going to announce partnership with everyone. Like we're partnering with GPU firms right now, decentralized GPU firms, because we need GPUs. The first phase is to collect data and then train models. So we are building that infrastructure so that once people collect data, they can start fine tuning. On the other hand, we are also working with some of the data labeling companies because once people collect data on top of us, they need to start cleaning the data. They might need to label the data for sentiment analysis, or if it's an image, just understanding the image better. And then we're also partnering with various tools that are there. These are traditional tools and Web3 tools that are available for people to like process data better, right? And these are some of these partnerships that we are working with to announce, which is already announced, or some of them will be announced soon as well. And then once we've done this, once we've released our first phase of a testnet, which is basically the data net, then we would get into model hosting. And once we have the models out, then there would be the agentic layer that will be built out. But to just give you some more depth into how our testnet works, DataNet, as I told you, is the first phase to a product, right? Which is basically a data repository. This could be around various topics. Solidity is one thing that someone is building like a deepened data net on top of it, which has deepened data. There are people who are building like an IP data net, which has various licensed data sets of various IPs. There is one being built for gaming. And there are many more examples. I'm sure that more people will build unique stuff as well. But for that, you would, as they contribute data and build these data nets, right? They would also need sort of like a data pool where they can access internet data. Because usually you think of internet to be like this large volume of data which has a lot of garbage involved, but also some useful data that is available, right? So that's what is the first phase of our product. We are launching something called a data intelligence layer, where we use people's bandwidth. We provide like nodes, and we let people's bandwidth to be consumed to crawl internet data and store in this data intelligence layer. Think of that like a data pool, which can be accessed by anyone who is building a model. Let's say this solidity model and or this trading agent model that's being built, and they have all the data that's required about trading, but they need certain data which is not being collected from off-chain options or offline options. They can access the internet data to fill in those gaps. So think of that to be like your additional repository pool, which you can access anytime to fill in gaps. And it can go the other way around as well. You could use any internet data to provide as a RAG to a model. Then, if you want to fill in certain gaps, then you can open up a data net and start collecting data from people. So yeah, so that's the first phase, and then we would open up the data nets where anyone can permissionlessly come start a data net and start collecting data, and then models will open up. Then you can start fine tuning models, and then you can make it available for agents to access. Then agent frameworks will open up as well. Then you can start deploying agents on top of us. So yeah, so that's how we are approaching this.
Yeah, definitely some very exciting things on the horizon. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys are trying to differentiate yourselves from others in this market.
So there are a lot of people who are doing, in the traditional space, because that's where everything started, right? When there was a need for, like, I had this conversation with someone, that Common Crawl was launched about a decade back, right? No one gave a shit about it because it's just a common pool of the internet. But in the last 3-4 years, everyone wanted to access Common Crawl because that's where you get internet data, and that's useful for training models, right? So when there was a need for data to be the biggest factor in an AI model, there were data companies that was built in Web2 like Scale and all that, which have done excellent work and very much more detailed compared to what's happening in Web3 right now. So there are very good examples that we could probably take from Web2 who are doing something similar, but not on the lines of what we are doing, right? Because we use Web3 more as a bootstrap. That's what I like about the Web3 space, right? We use Web3 as a bootstrapping mechanism. Most of the GPU players today, as you see, centralized players, the cost are 7x, 8x of what a GPU would cost compared to the decentralized players. And it's the biggest, plus point for anyone who's getting into AI. If it's a smaller company, they would choose a decentralized GPU provider because the cost is, as I told you, like 8x lesser compared to any centralized players out there, right? It just makes innovations happen much more quicker, much more easier, and that's much less capital. And I think that's how I see Web3 industry itself. And we are approaching data in terms of the bootstrapping method, right? How can we kind of provide data at like no cost, where you can just collect data, give people rewards using our block rewards, and then you can train models with that, and then you attribute back when your model makes money. So that is something that we wanted to see achieve, and not many people in Web2 do that, in traditional methods do that, because that's how now that industry works. And that's one thing. Another one that we work on is like collecting data across the globe, right? We're gonna let people collect data from businesses. You're gonna let people collect data from individuals, and when you do that, you can't have contracts with people across the globe, right? It's just there's so many red tapes, and it's not theoretically possible or practically possible also. The only way to do that is use code as a law. You can trust code, right? And the best way to achieve that is to use blockchain for that. So where what we do is basically once you collect data, we make sure that you can see the entire provenance on chain. You can see that where your data travels, where it's being used, which model uses the data, and who infers on that model, what is the payment that they pay for that model, and how much you're getting back from that, right? How much you're getting attributed back from that. You can see everything on chain. And so we use code as a law to prove to people that you can use this platform, contribute data on a recurring manner, and get paid on a recurring manner. And so that's how we are different from the traditional players or other players that are there in the market. And in Web3, I think people do something similar that we do. A couple of guys do, I believe, but everyone is approaching data and on their own, right? We are more on the specialized or domain specific data, and the people who are working on a much more general or a large scale like foundation models and stuff. So yeah, everyone has a piece of the cake for themselves. So yeah, so let's see how it goes.
Yeah, well, there's definitely some interesting developments. So finally, like you mentioned a few milestones. Where, like, what kind of milestones can people look forward to in the next like week? I know you mentioned the testnet launch, or
Yeah.
maybe the next like month. Tell us like what they can look forward to, and then finally where they can find you online.
Yeah, so I think the next biggest milestone for us is to actually let the product be available to the public. So testnet is one way where we could show them what can be done, and we also see testnet as more as an awareness campaign, just be letting people know that something like this is possible. Because like right now Web3 is exploring AI, right? You see either the retail or the people who are building in the space, they're just exploring. There's a lot of speculation, but I believe Web3 always starts like the trend always starts like that. It starts with speculation and then it goes on to like much more serious use cases. And we want to be that player which causes some kind of serious use cases. And one way to do that, if you want to build, for example, like agents which are like purpose driven, which have a need and are useful in a certain way other than tweeting on Twitter, then you would need to have the infrastructure or the models that can support that, right? So we want the public to be aware of that. So our testnet is, I think, one of the biggest milestones for us to showcase to the world what can be done on top of us. We also have interesting partnerships and people who are building on top of us. There is a large organization that is going to use our infrastructure. There's a government body that's going to use our infrastructure. So we'll be announcing that soon. So I would consider those as milestones.
Awesome. Well, everyone keep abreast of those. And then finally, where can people learn more about OpenLedger? Shout out the website, shout out where they can find you online
Yeah,
or
so you
Twitter.
can, yeah, absolutely. You can check out at OpenLedger HQ on Twitter, and openledger.xyz is our website. We've updated a lot of stuff. We've announced what we're doing. We just update our blogs. So you can go ahead and read that. Would love to get feedback from the community. You can reach out to me on Twitter, like I'm at Ramkumar Tweet. So you can find me on Twitter. And my DMs are always open. Happy to interact with anyone.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, let's go engage with Ram and let's continue building the future of Web3.